Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing this wonderful Friday morning? Um, Thank you for joining me on my Facebook Live this morning. As always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will answer throughout the live, so just ask away. And if you are listening to the recording, let me know by using hashtag replay in the comments section. That way I can go back and answer any questions you have. For those of you on the call, say hello. I always love to hear from you. And tell me, appropriate with the subject today, what summer plans do you have with your dog? Are you doing something exciting? COVID seems to be on the down, so we hopefully can go out and play again. And that's why I thought this live was appropriate for today. So let me make sure I have comments available. There we are. Okay, today's live is all about summer. The weather's getting good. Here it's going to be crazy hot for the next week. So I'm just really thinking about summer. What are your plans for the summer with your dog? Are you confident you're ready to go, or are you a little worried about how your dog will behave, or even if you want to take your dog just in case it goes badly? Even with Wiki, she hasn't done as much stuff as I've already usually done by the time my dogs are this age. We'll start with something super simple you can start with. Walking the dog can get super boring when you walk the same streets every day. And the walking becomes rote, something you have to do because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to walk your dog every day. And I find you end up like when I watch people walking down the street, they don't look like they're having a good time. They're not paying attention. And your dog's not paying attention. It's just something you do every day. And slowly but steadily, your skills start to slide. Your dog starts pulling more and more, and you find yourself nagging your dog to stop pulling. But really, all you want to do is get home again. And this isn't an enjoyable experience. An easy way to add some mental stimulation and make this a little more fun is to find new places to walk your dog. You don't have to go far. Um, Between COVID restrictions and winter, a lot of dogs haven't gone anywhere new in a long time. Dogs live the same boring life, walk the same walk every day. They need something else to do with their brains. You want to make this a positive experience for both of you. So jump in the car and drive to a new neighborhood. You know, when you're driving around, whatever, shopping or whatever, you look at neighborhoods and go, oh, there's lovely houses in that neighborhood. I love checking out people's houses. What they're doing with their gardens, front doors. I have this fascination with front doors. When I spent a weekend in New York City, the front doors on the brownstones are amazing. I could do pictures of just front doors and be totally happy. So that's it. Get out, check out houses, go for a new walk, look for gardening ideas or whatever, and enjoy a new neighborhood with your dog instead of, when you leave home, you can only go so many ways and then that's it. You've seen it all, you know everything they do, you know everything, um, what they have in their front lawns, whatever. And so does your dog. Go to a new neighborhood. It's just something super simple you can do on a regular basis that makes the walking more interesting for both of you. Once you know, and it's a good way to start getting them out. Once you know your dog can handle new neighborhoods, it's time to lighten it up a bit. How about being a tourist in your own city or town? There are plenty of interesting places that are dog friendly. In Ottawa, some suggestions are Majors Hill Park, the Byward Market, Spark Street Mall, Blockhouse Island in Brockville. Merrickville as a whole is just a wonderful place to go walking, and you can sit in the park and watch the boats go by. So lots of different places you can go. And getting out once a week or once every 2 weeks, whatever you can, introduces you possibly to a newer area and also gets your dog mentally stimulated. Does that sound scary? Are you thinking there's no way your dog is ready for all those people and all that stuff? Do your first trip at a quiet time. This way, you and your dog can get to experience the new environment without the crowds. Start somewhere you are already familiar with. This will make you more comfortable, putting you in a better state of mind to train your dog. If it's all new for you and new for your dog, that's a lot of stress on you and the dog, because remember, the stress goes down the leash. But if you go somewhere you're already familiar with, so sometimes I'll even go to that place without my dog just to get a feel for the place and a feel for what I can and cannot do with your dog. in Merrickville, the lovely store owners put out water bowls regularly, so you don't have to stress about your dog getting too hot on the walk. And some of the stores allow your dogs to walk in. Some of the stores also put, one store had tights in a basket on the road, and my dog may have picked up a tight, but she gave it right back, and we gave it, put it back in the basket and kept walking. So sometimes things happen, but that's part of the fun. Good morning, Barb. How are you and Poppy doing this morning? Um, so for the first time I went to the Byward Market in Ottawa with Wicca, and for those you don't know the Byward Market, it's just this, it's right downtown. It's very, there's lots of open storefronts, tables on the sidewalks. There's lots of stuff going on, cars going by, vendors setting up, church bells, people sitting at tables. So there, and potentially there could be hundreds of people walking on the sidewalks. I went Sunday morning at 9 a.m. So I had the environment, but I didn't have to deal with the hundreds of people. And we just walked around. We walked up to Majors Hill Park, giving us new environment, new smells, new everything, but avoiding the people, giving us the room to stop regularly and do some ODR game. And if she seeing right away if she needed to collect herself and was able to, and then continue going. Sorry, I'm killing mosquitoes. Um, we finally got the rain we've been waiting for, but now, of course, come back the vicious mosquitoes, which incredibly we had quite a few of them, even though um, even though we had no water. So strange. Good morning, Julie. How are you? Yes, I look forward to seeing you in person again. So nice to see that lockdown is over and we're starting to get back to in-person appointments. Okay, so the other attraction I really like to check out with my dogs, especially my young dogs, is fairs. Um, I go the day before they open because that's my familiarization period to see how my dog does. The day before the fairs open, there's stuff everywhere. They're unloading the trucks, they're setting up the rides, they're setting up the vendors. Some of them have already started to cook, so you see the smells or smell the smells. Um, they're yelling at each other as they're getting stuff done. It's a lovely level of distraction for a lot of dogs and a great place to get started. And the gates are open, so it's free, and you can just walk around, be there for 10 minutes or an hour, whatever you feel you need, and then go home, getting you ready to possibly try the next day, maybe early in the morning when it's all fully set up without people, to eventually working at going when it's full crowds. I do, or I used to before COVID, I do a lot of demos at fairs. So for my dogs to be able to walk through a full fairground is important. And yeah, because usually between while we take breaks from our demos, we go and walk through the exhibition and stuff like that. Lots going on, lots of fun. So let's see. So there's when you're going to the fairgrounds before they open, there's banging and clanging because they're putting the rides together. I've lost my place. Hold on. Early mornings are usually quiet, so I pick early mornings in a lot of situations. With one of my dogs, he couldn't handle anything. So I would start at 8 o'clock in the morning in the supermarket parking lot, where the only thing was the Tim Hortons way at one end, the supermarket way at the other end, and just me in an empty parking lot. And that for him was challenging at the beginning, but eventually it wasn't. Eventually he could handle full crowds. But you got to start, you want to start easy enough that you're successful. But at the same time, if you don't start, you never get to where you want to go, where you can take your dog everywhere. So it's figuring out a way to make the environment, setting up the environment, there's another mosquito, setting up the environment so it's successful for you. Make a plan, sorry, make a plan, but also realize that the plan may have to change. You never know what's going to freak your dog out or what's going to be super easy that you're like, oh, this is going to be a challenge. And your dog's like, that was easy. Good morning, Debbie. How are you this morning? So always start with ODR game. Remember, the ODR game stands for observe, don't react. I am training even before I get out of the car. Have you trained your dog to wait quietly until released out of the car? That is part of my crate games and then eventually moves to the car. My dogs are in crates in the car, but even if I'm not using a crate in the car, the same rules apply to the door. I open the door and expect the dog to wait quietly until I say break, which is my release, and then he can come out of the car. So even before you let your dog out of the car, you're already training the new environment. If you go to open your crate door or your car door and your dog's like, I'm going, you're like, but you're not. And you close that door, and we might just sit there with the window open and reward him for being calm inside the car while the environment goes on without you. Remember, you're always looking at pushing your dog's level of confidence, but not blowing it out of the water. So if all your dog can do is sit in the car, so be it. That's what we work on. If your dog's in a crate in the car, then I open the door and I just reward him for looking quietly in the crate. That's great. It's working towards your goal. So instead of firing out of the car, you're waiting till your dog be calm, already giving you that much better response when he's out of the car. As soon as he gets out of the car, you're playing ODR. What is your dog doing? Pulling, lunging, barking? This might be too much. You might have to get back in the car and move a little further. Distance makes any distraction easier. I get people who call me all the time. Oh, my dog loses his mind when he sees a dog. Well, how far? 10 feet? Yes. 20 feet? Yes. 30 feet? Yes. 100 feet? Oh, I'm not sure. Most dogs, and some dogs it's 200 feet, but most dogs have a line, a distance that all of a sudden they're like, I can handle it at 200 feet. Great. That's your foot in the door. That's what you can build from that, right? Because if you can work at 200 feet, you can work ODR and go, this is how it feels to be calm when you see a dog. Then now you go to 175 feet. Can you do it now? 150 feet. Can you do it now? And you keep moving closer, especially with young dogs that are full of hormones and their brain doesn't always work at full power. This might take a while. It might take a year, but you're still moving closer, getting closer to the goal of walking by a dog. So you're out of the car. Is your dog on a tight leash, but not totally losing control? Great. You're that much closer. So that means this challenge is not way too hard, but it's something you can work through. Sorry, another mosquito. Always with always with your leash hand on your body. That gives your dog your anchor point. When your hand is off your body, if your dog pulls, your arm moves forward, right? The dog pulls, you go like this. That reinforces your dog for pulling, going, I pull, I get closer to whatever the distraction is. My brain draws harder. Where when they pull and the leash stops them, they're like, oh, that didn't work. Lunging is a learned behavior. Dogs lunge because they get closer to where they're going when they lunge. I had a client, she had a Bouvier. So 85-pound big black dog. And that darn dog was so smart. She would wait. The woman was really good and paid a lot of attention. But every now and then she'd start talking to a person next to her or whatever. And the dog would wait till the owner wasn't paying attention to lunge at the dogs near her. But when the owner was paying attention, the dog never did it. Keeping your hand on your body means even when you're not actively paying attention, your body's ready. So if the dog goes to lunge, they don't get anywhere. If you start this with a puppy, they never learn how to lunge because lunging never gets them anything. It's much harder on their body and on yours if they learn how to lunge, especially with a big dog, because they learn, I lunge and I get where I'm going. So I'm going to keep lunging till I get where I'm going. So that's why it's so important to have your hand anchored on your body. It's like, have you ever seen a dog who's been tied out? Like a dog who grew up on a rope, sad as that may be. They don't lunge. They go to the end of the leash and bark, but they don't lunge because it's stupid. You lunge and you get hurt, right? It hurts when you lunge. So there's no point in lunging. This is what the anchor point is based on. So if your dog is fully focused on something, and fully focused looks like ears forward, mouth closed, usually still, that is, you take a step back because you're trying to make it more uncomfortable for them to focus because you want them to voluntarily give up on that focus. You can watch, But when you focus, that's when your brain starts pulling out of your head. And that's what you don't want. Go ahead and watch, just don't focus. So your dog is fully focused on something. Take one step back, hands staying on your body. So many times I say, take a step back, and the client does. Here, I'll make the dog comfortable and take a step back, but I'll leave the leash in the same place. No, when you take a step back, that leash hand stays on your body. So now the distraction is further, the pulling is harder, and the dog has a choice. I can stay focused or I can step away from the distraction. If he says, I'm going to stay focused, you take another step. You continue to take steps till the dog's finally like, okay, I can move away from the distraction. If your dog is still looking at the distraction, this is what you reward. This is what you're looking for. It's being able to watch on a loose leash. If your dog comes off the distraction but bounces back at you, you do not reward that, because then you'd be rewarding, get distracted, come back and get a cookie. My Siberian, I taught to lunge and come back, because I would reward coming back. He would lunge at something, come back and be like, see, I'm good. So don't do that. So if your dog can look at something and not pull, that's a rewardable behavior. If the distraction isn't changing, you reward that 3 to 5 times, and then you wait for voluntary attention. Hold on, let me get back to my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. The important thing here is to watch your dog. So often when I'm working with clients, they become distracted by the environment as much as the dog is. I get it. When you're working stuff like this with your dog, it's nerve-wracking, especially when you first start, because you're not sure what your dog's going to do. There's a lot of stress on the handler. So you're worried about the environment as much as your dog is, which is why you're looking at the environment. But if you don't watch your dog, you may miss important opportunities to reinforce. So yes, of course, be aware of what's around you. I like to have something behind me, like my car or a building or something, so nobody can come up around behind me. But watch your dog and pay attention to what your dog is telling you. Are they pulling? Are they looking? Are they ignoring? What are they doing? Okay, let me find my spot. So we're back to getting out of the car. If your dog gets out of the car, looks around and goes, okay, I'm ready to work, that's awesome. That tells you this environment is super simple for the dog, and you can do some tricks. Go, hey, I'm going to reward you for that choice, or you can just start moving along to whatever you were doing. If your dog gets out of the car and he's like, bounce, 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 do nothing. Just stand there. They're just like, oh my God, where are we? Look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. They're not focusing on anything. They're just observing and just getting used to their environment, super excited. Do nothing, just wait. Let them choose to focus on something or give up on their environment and focus on you. Just do nothing. Okay, so your dog gets out of the car and he's focused on you. Now you're like, okay, let's start walking. Can you walk? Can you maintain a loose leash? And to me, everybody, I've had a live about this, but you have to decide what your criteria for loose leash is. For my dogs, loose leash criteria is do whatever you want, don't really pull. Taut, so the leash being straight is fine. With mine is if the pressure on the leash is straight, so it's taut, but my hand can stay next to my body without me fighting with it, I'm okay with that. If my hand starts to do this holding the leash, so raise up, then I'm like, you're pulling too hard. So you can decide what your criteria is. And this to me is whether they're on their head halters or whether they're on the collar, the criteria is the same. So that to me is loose leash walking. You can say, well, I don't like that. That's too vague, which I agree, it is vague. You could say loose leash walking to me is in heel position. That's more a position relative to your body, but that's perfectly fine. As long as you're clear on the criteria and you've explained it to your dog, whatever you choose is fine. So now you start walking into the environment and your dog is doing great on leash. I want you to randomly do brain checks. So what this means is I'll stop moving. And does my dog turn around and go, hey, what are we doing? Which I can then reward by calling his name or asking him to get into heel or doing nose touches or doing spins. This is what I'm currently doing with my dog, walking to the pond where she's losing her mind. And I'll have to do a live on that. Another test of where your dog's brain is your dog's walking, he's on leash, he's not pulling like a truck. And can you call your dog? And your dog goes, yep, right away. I spin around and come to you. Or is he like, no, I'm sorry. It looks like I'm paying attention, but I'm actually totally focused on the environment. Or he's telling you your recall cue has nowhere near the value you think it does. So those are a different test. So if the dog doesn't come, stop, play ODR, and go back to, are you pulling? Are you all over the place? Or are you focused on me? Some dogs at first can't listen. You have to stop, and then they're like, oh, wait, nothing's happening. Oh, hey, how are you? That's fine. You're just, every dog is different and every environment is different. With my Siberian, we went to a petting zoo. I was doing an agility demo at a rescue farm out here. So there was pigs and chickens and donkeys and all that stuff. And I walked around with my Siberian. And my Siberian, as most do, has super high prey drive. His ability to function near those animals was almost non-existent. Within 20 minutes, he was like, oh, yeah, we've done this, because I had done a lot of work near animals. But for him, farm animals was super challenging. Where my border collie, who was much, much younger at the time, was like, whatever, it's a horse. Didn't care. So be prepared that sometimes your dogs are going to have hard times with things you're like, really? I didn't think that would be hard. This whole scenario is a skill building experience. It's training. I go there training. I don't try to do this when I'm out with my family on an outing, when my focus is on other things. If you don't prepare your dog with your full focus, where you're actively training, and then put your dog in a situation where you're like, meh, it might work, or meh, it may not, then you're setting yourself up for failure and frustration. So if instead you go to the fair with your family and you want to take your dog, and you get there and your dog's losing its mind and pulling like a truck, and your kids are like, take me to that ride. So now you're split, right? Can you focus on your kids, or do you focus on your dog? Or you're there with friends and they want to go do something and your dog's obviously losing his mind and incapable of handling this environment. Or you've been there an hour and he did great, but now he needs to go home. So before I put my dogs in situations like that, where I'm going to want to do one thing, but I know I should do another thing for the dog, I do this training. So when I go into situations like this with my dog, my dog's like, I can do this. Or I'm prepared. Like, I have a crate in the car and I take him into the fair for a half hour. Then I bring him back, put him in the car with a bone, and then go back and enjoy the fair with my family. So set yourself up for success. You'd rather do a little prep work, getting ready, so that you can go to these places with your dog. But be prepared, especially if you've got a young dog who's still figuring stuff out, like Wicca is this year. Be prepared to have management in place, like a crate in your car. So the ultimate test for taking your dog out in public is dining out with your dog. I love to put my advanced classes through this exercise, and I'm definitely coming up with some situations for some of my private clients that we're going to go practice. A lot of places with outdoor dining have takeout counters. When you have to order and talk to someone, you have to take your focus off your dog. At first, this can be a huge challenge, because when you're out training with your dog, you are fully focused on your dog. And all of a sudden, you're expected to make a conversation, ask for something, and pay for something, which is going to use part of your brain. So only a little piece of your brain can focus on your dog. This might go really well, or your dog's like, hello, why aren't you paying attention? And then it's really easy to fall into panic. So this is starting to put into real life scenarios. Remember, my goal is always to get you to a dog that you can go anywhere and take anything. It would be the exact same training I'd give to a service dog that does go everywhere and can handle all different scenarios. Practice this setup by having conversations with people without dogs, with or without dogs. Start in a quiet environment that you and your dog are comfortable in, one less stress. Have the person stand about 5 feet or so away from you and have a conversation. Pretend to give your full focus to the person, but out of the side of your eye, watch your dog. If your dog is looking around on a loose leash, just hanging out, you can reward that. That's what you're looking for. If your dog lies down, you can reward that. If your dog's staring at you for cookies, do not reward that. If you reward that, this will eventually lead to pawing or barking at you when your dog feels he's stared at you long enough that he deserves a treat. This is not something I reward. This whole setup, I don't reward for too many sessions. This is a real life application I'm working towards. If my dog can't handle this, I'm probably going to go back a few steps, and work on the skills a little more and then try it again. Start small, have the conversation for like 5 minutes. Neighbors on the street are perfect. And then keep going. The next challenge, walking back to the table with your dog and your coffee. This is when you realize how well your dog walks on leash when you're carrying a coffee. The nice thing about take-out canners is most places will have coffees with lids, so you have a little more leeway. But walking with a coffee and a dog is a whole new level of challenge, something you can practice at home. And lastly, can your dog lie quietly while you enjoy your coffee with a friend? How good is your dog at home when you eat? Do you have to put them away? Do they understand how to lie quietly? Have you done any cot work where your dog understands how to lie there no matter what's going on in their environment? Make sure when you're practicing this that you are rewarding again for your dog lying there quietly, looking around, not staring at you for cookies. You can do staring at you for cookies, but just be careful you never let them escalate to barking and pawing at you for cookies. Okay, that is a lot of challenges. Remember, this is training, confidence building for you and your dog. Design this outing to make it work for you and your dog. You could stay at the table with your dog while someone else goes to get the coffee. Now it's a whole lot easier. You can play ODR game at a bit of a distance and go to the park to have your coffee where there's a lot more room than tables stuck together. It would be, if you go somewhere where there's a bunch of tables but no people, that's much easier than if you go somewhere where the tables are full of people. Again, judge your time of day to pick the right scenario for you and your dog. What about if there's a dog at the next table? Can your dog do that? All things to consider and all things that'll take you towards the point where you can go anywhere and your dog's like, I can do this. When you're out and you go to places and are like, I would like to do that with my dog. Take a scenario like that and figure out what pieces does your dog need to be successful. This is the true art of training your dog. It's figuring out, it is not in training the exercises themselves, but in teaching yourself how to break down the big picture. So what you want to achieve with your dog is broken down into little achievable pieces that you can ultimately put together to get that dog. This is the real reason to hire a dog trainer, because honestly, all the training you could ever want is probably available free online. And I've seen this with a lot of my clients. They have all these pieces, but they have no idea how to take them from the training scenario to the real life scenario circle and how to make it work. The hard part is knowing how to tailor every step of the journey with your dog, your goals, and your lifestyle. What to do when things go wrong, how to get it back on track, how to avoid doing the wrong things in the first place. No two dogs and handler teams are alike. So what may work amazingly for one pair could ruin another team. And that is so true. Every dog is different. Remember last week's lives of drives and sensitivities. The things that I've worked with Wicca are different than the things that I worked with Egg, are completely different than the things I worked with Speck. And that's just my last 3 dogs. Always changing things to make the dog understand to help the dog understand what it is I'm explaining. Wiki has never been hyper, but she's a little worried. So stuff like when I took her to, We went downtown to Majors Hill Park, and there's, for those, anyways, Major Hills Park is on a hill. And there's a like a coffee shop that you can get, and there's tables. So we went there first, and we started with having breakfast and a coffee. And she did great. But then we tried to go for a walk, and she was a disaster. Too much. This little girlie needs things set up little bits at a time. That was way too much for her. And then we put them back in the car, and then we went somewhere else, and she wouldn't even get out of the crate. She was like, no, I'm done with you. Where I learned very quickly to do our walking exercises first and then come and sit and have coffee. That worked much better for her. And also, we would do some walking exercises and then get in the car and be in the car for a half hour going to a new place, or literally sitting in the car just chatting while she decompressed and was able to try again. So that's what she needed. Spec needed very small outings also, because he became overwhelmed with his environment, but he got higher. So he got tight and tense, where she just gets poopy. So that's it. Every dog needs a different thing. Barb with Poppy. Poppy gets excited and starts to get bitey. Spec would get like that. Every dog needs some little modifications to make it all work. Barb, this is so true. Thank you. Yep. And Debbie, yes. Setting up for success. Debbie, one of the biggest challenges, the more I dog train and the more I get these amazing clients who work really hard, one of the biggest challenges, and I was the same way when I started, is we're working on this, and we don't concentrate on the dog being successful, and therefore we're not concentrating on us being successful. So it all gets very yucky in our heads. You want to go, I don't care if it's super easy and something your dog should have no problem with. You start from success. Start with something easy. Getting out of the car is easy. Great. You work 5 minutes on getting out of the car. Get in the car, get out of the car, get in the car, get out of the car, get in the car. So by the time you go to your next exercise, your dog's already, wow, we've had a great morning. And you've already gone, wow, we've got a great morning to build on. But if you fight with getting out of the car because you've parked that much closer, and now that was a challenge, by the time you take that first step, you're already in the, wow, I've worked really hard and this is no longer fun. So setting up for success is huge. Debbie, yes. Okay. No two dogs and handler teams are alike, so what may work amazingly for one pair could ruin another team. So true. If you want help not only breaking down your goals into a manageable training plan, but the support and coaching, and make sure you stay on track as you train your dog, just send me a message here on Facebook or email me at info@dogtraining.ca to see if my consultations, services, and programs are a good fit for you and your dog. So the last piece I want to talk about is a whole lot more decompression. Get away from it all and get back to nature. There are many benefits to getting out in nature. For the humans, some are an antidote for stress, lower blood pressure, stress hormone levels, reduce nervous system arousal, enhance immune system function, increase self-esteem, reduce anxiety, and improve mood. For your dog, out in nature, it allows them to be dogs. Same thing as us, reducing stress, improving mood. Find some new nature trails to enjoy. And again, the same old trail is the same old trail. It's boring for both of you. Nice thing about nature and living in Ontario, nature has seasons. So the same trail does look different every week, which I love. I love seasons. If your dog can't go off leash, put your dog on a line and a harness. You want this to be a decompression walk for your dog. You want them to just meander. There's no real rules. We're just going for a walk. If you're like me, I'm always curious about what things are. So there's a great app called iNaturalist. You can take a picture of a bird, plant, or tree, and you send it in, and they tell you what it is. So that makes my walks much more fun, especially when my son was younger. We would take lots of pictures and send it in, and right away it tells you, well, it could be this, and then people answer back and say it's for sure this. There are so many wonders in nature to look at, and at this time of year in the spring, there's all these flowers, and then there's like berries and all sorts of stuff. A fun game to play in the forest with your dog is hide and seek. One person holds the dog and the other goes and hides. If your dog's off leash, what I do is as soon as they're kind of distracted, I go and hide. At first, run only a few feet and go behind the closest tree. Work up to harder hides that make your dog work harder and harder to find you. This not only is a great fun game and your dog makes your dog really want to search for you, it's building value for searching for you. So if your dog can ever go off leash, um, finding you is already heavily built in to be rewarding. How about an overnight trip? You have done the training, you're ready to test your skills, you've gone to a bunch of local things. Are you ready to do overnight? If you're into camping, most campgrounds allow well-behaved, quiet dogs, especially after the first few times. Camping, for the first few times, if you're going to go camping, pick a low traffic site to make your life easier and your dogs. Our first camping trip was with our Akita named Yukon. We picked a site close to the bathrooms because that's what I usually do. But unfortunately, the site was, there was like two roads coming on either side of the site, and the bathroom was right at the tip, and we were almost to the tip. Once it got dark, he would bark at every single person who would come out of the dark walking by our site. But unfortunately, he was tied up on the next to the picnic table in the dark, so the people couldn't see him, and they'd be walking along, la la la, and all of a sudden they'd hear woo woo woo, and they were like, bah! So the next night we changed sites. It was so much better for everybody involved. So I suggest for your first camping, especially if you have a guarding type breed, don't set up in a heavy trafficked part of the campsite. Remember, always setting your dog up for success. Now when I camp, my dogs sit on their cot on the campsite. I do tie them to the cot so they are on leash like they're supposed to be. The understanding of staying on their cots helps them understand not to bark or run out into the road. And it's a clear boundary and gives them a job to do. And gives me something to reinforce, right? You're sitting on your cot. I usually have a big bowl of kibble sitting on the table, and everybody just regularly throws kibble at them. They sit there quietly on their cot. I give them piles of exercise, take them for walks, usually find ways to get them swimming or off leash, but then they have to sit on their cots. If sitting on their cots, cot training is just an extension of ODR game. If they can't sit on their cots when people walk by, then I'm going to take them off their cots and play ODR on leash, right? So then you're going, look, people walk by the road, reward, reward, reward as they focus on that, and then we'll move back to the cot. I will also, with younger dogs, use an X-Pen to, again, help them be successful and help me enjoy my camping trip. When I go camping, it is a family event. I'm not just training my dogs. So I want to make sure to have management tools like big meaty bones so that when I want to sit by the fire and not think about my dogs are happy doing something that is appropriate. For those of you who would rather 4 walls and a bed for your overnight travels, which I totally get, there are a lot of accommodations that now take pets. Unless you live in an apartment and your dog is already used to this, hotel hallways and elevators can be quite the challenge. I teach my dogs to sit at the back of the elevator and wait to be released when the door opens. Here's a couple of reasons. I go to large competitions where there are usually a lot of dogs staying in the same hotel. I don't want my dogs to meet a dog. So as the door slides open, and I've seen this in apartments when I've worked in apartment buildings, same thing. I don't want dogs meeting nose to nose before I can even see the dog or the person attached to them. I want my dog to understand to sit back. So when the door opens, if a dog were to charge in, I'm going to tell the owner to move it. And I have that space to do that. The other thing is, when you're out in public with your dog, you are an ambassador for dogs in general. There are still a lot of people who are scared of dogs, and there's just a lot of people who don't like dogs because they had a neighbor with a nasty dog who pooped on their lawn every day. So they just don't like dogs. I want, when they meet me and my dogs, to be like, hey, maybe dogs aren't so bad. So I always want to be an ambassador for dogs. If you've got somebody who's a little worried about dogs, or they've got their little kids with them or something, and the elevator opens and your dog charges out, that could scare them. But if instead the dog's sitting there quietly, they're going to go, oh, and then they can choose, or you can ask them to move away if they don't. But now you have that room, that space to do that. So I am looking forward to getting out and enjoying summer with my young dog. I've laid a good foundation with Wicca, and we are ready to go. Some of the skills she knows are walking well on leash, being calm with distractions, and her cop games. These skills are sound like little skills, but they actually have taken me her entire life to train, and she will continue to train these skills because they are the foundation of having a dog that can go out in public. Having these skills gives me the confidence to go places and do things with Wiki, allowing her to participate in all our family events, like walk on a busy street, breakfast on the patio, a family barbecue, allowing me to avoid having to leave her at home because she might bark, lunge, or behave inappropriately, or just generally be a pain in my butt, which would stress me out. Stuff like stealing food off the table at a family picnic, barking at everyone that walks by the campsite, flying out of the car in a busy parking lot, which is terrifying. I hope this has given you some ideas of how to get started with your dog, getting them ready to join in your adventures. If you aren't sure where to start with the training or stuck along the way, message me. My Canine Reset monthly coaching program will give you the training and the guidance to get your dog ready. Thank you so much for watching. Join me for my next Facebook Live, Friday, June 11th at 10 a.m. That would be next week. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you then. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.